Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Aaron Jacobs podcast. I'm Aaron Jacobs, a former public school band director in the state of Ohio for the last 15 years, 10 of which were spent at Avon, west of Cleveland. And today I'm talking about the concept of food noise to help you try to keep those holiday pounds off, because we're coming up to Thanksgiving here in the States. We're coming up to Christmas, some break time. There's going to be an abundance and availability of just sweet treats and all kinds of bullshit that's just going to wreck your progress. And you should feel guilty and never eat that stuff again and be strict and be perfect, or you're going to fail at life and I hate you. Okay, just kidding. That got out of hand. You don't need to be that way, but depending on where you're at in your health journey, you need to take different protocols into account when it comes to food noise and how to handle these moments that are going to come up in your life when you're going to have these sweet treats just laid out everywhere in front of you in the coming weeks. Okay, what the fuck is food noise? If you've never heard the term food noise before, it's a heightened or persistent manifestation of food cue reactivity, often leading to food-related or intrusive thoughts and maladaptive eating behaviors. Okay, well, what the fuck does that mean? It basically means that you are really prone to thinking about food a lot, even when you're not actually hungry. And I wanted to research this topic today and spend some time talking about it today, not just because the holidays are coming up, but because I know a lot of people experience problems with food noise. They just don't have a term to put to it, and they haven't had strategies to work around it. And yes, there are drugs and things coming out of the market that are GLP-1s that can mute some of those signals between the gut to the brain, which can help with those things, certainly. But I like to take a more natural approach to things. If we can use behaviors and foods to modify your lifestyle, that tends to be way less expensive and way less invasive than injecting yourself with a drug. And are there certainly a couple people in the world that are going to need a GLP-1 to finally make their weight loss happen and to be healthy? I mean, if I had a choice between for somebody that is morbidly obese, that just literally has the constant crazy amount of food noise, that is just not going to lose the weight and be metabolically healthy without the drug, then yes, I mean, some people will need to take those. But I do think the amount of people that make the jump to those things is way higher than it needs to be. So according to Indiana University, which we are, go Bucks, by the way, we're playing them in football this weekend, a huge game. Although I'm going to be honest, I think Indiana's a little bit overrated. They haven't played anybody. I still think the Buckeyes will find a way to make it a close game because we just tend to do that. And so I think it'll be a narrow win and it'll be frustrating for Buckeye fans. And it is what it is. But the Indiana University School of Medicine actually has some figures here saying that roughly 2 to 3% of the population in the United States may be taking GLP-1s in some form or another, which means that at least 5 million people currently are taking these drugs, and possibly closer to 7 or 8 million people are now taking these drugs. I'm not going to claim one way or another whether or not you should take such a drug because I'm not a doctor. I'm a health coach. So for the few of you that have taken it and it worked for you, great. There's also some strategies that I have used and also have had clients use that have worked for them. And if you use a different protocol, great, good for you. But I like the simplest and most natural approach to things as often as possible and trying those things first rather than jumping right to taking another medication. It baffles me how many doctors and medical practitioners have such little nutrition training out there. And I was talking to someone recently and they even said their doctor told them, hey, just go move more, like walk more and run more, and then eat less junk food for weight loss. And like, there's more to it than that. So why is this a problem? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Food noise is a problem because if you're thinking about food all the time, you're going to probably eat more. Not to mention, if you have more food noise, you probably also have some guilt and shame around those feelings toward food, which can also lead to some poor mental health outcomes for people as well. And during COVID, this was 100% me. I had so much food noise, the availability of food and the ability to go, just like I had more time on my hands. So I would just go to the grocery store for fun when it was like the quiet hours. So I would avoid people and I would like that was like my fun time going out, was like strapping the mask on and go to the grocery store. And then I had all this availability of food. I'll just true life confession here. My big downfall during COVID that I think caused me to gain a bunch of weight during the quarantine was not just the lack of activity and not understanding how important walking is and how impactful steps are in a fitness journey. Dude, I was fucking cranking these blocks of cheese. If you've ever been to a Greek restaurant and they bring out saganaki, which is like a big brick of cheese that they light on fire and they say, "Opa!" I was having like a brick of cheese like that, like, dude, 5-6 times a week, sometimes every day of the fucking week, bro. Like it was, I was absolutely cranking blocks of cheese, man, during the quarantine. I was eating my feelings in the quarantine with some freaking blocks of cheese. And these were probably, now looking back at that, because I haven't had one since the quarantine, or if I do in the future, I'm going to split it with like 4 people, man. I think each of these bricks of cheese was like 800 to 1,000 calories. I walk by them in the store when I go to our local specialty grocery store on occasion. I still see these bricks of cheese sitting there staring back at me, and I just look at them and I just go, nah, no thanks. It doesn't support my goals. And that's actually a strategy that I encourage people to use that we'll talk about later on to help avoid the food noise. But yeah, man, it turns out cranking 1,000 calories of cheese a day while not moving your ass, turns out you might be really unhealthy. Wild concept, I know. But let's talk about how the everyday person can combat food noise if they have some, or the intrusive thoughts about food constantly in their life, so that they can live a more productive life, a healthier life, and a happier life without the guilt and shame around thinking about food all the time. And especially when you're going to see treats, for me, it was a big brick of cheese. There's a strategy that we'll talk about later on that'll hopefully help you work through the holiday season. Okay, so tip number 1 for everybody is avoid fad diets. I've done a whole series of podcasts on why I don't think keto, paleo, vegan, like all of these diets are very specialized, very restrictive, let alone carnivore, for God's sakes. Adhering to those protocols for a lifetime is just not realistic for most people. Doing an elimination diet and taking a few things out of your diet for multiple weeks at a time, I think is great, and then reintroducing one thing at a time. You can do an elimination diet without doing an extreme version of that elimination diet, right? You can just rotate things in and out. It's a lot simpler. And correlationally, we can't say causationally, but correlationally, these diets have become more popularized and broadcast because we have the internet.com and we have social media. And can we objectively say that with these diets being more popularized by influencers, are we more healthy as a country in America? We sure as hell aren't in the last 10, 15, 20 years. It's only gotten worse. So we can't really say that people, now maybe the individuals hopping on those diets are healthier, right? But overall, a lot of people are trying those diets and failing them. And so people need something that can work for them and sustain them. And so what I do with my clients is we start with what they already do, and we work to optimize things that you already like and already do, but give you the best version of those to support your goals. So tip number 1 is just avoid fad diets. You got to figure out a diet that works for you. It's very individual, and that's a huge thing with the clients that I work with, is finding things that they love to eat that are also nutritionally dense and support their goals. Number 2, speaking of nutrition density, eat more whole foods. If the thing didn't exist 200 years ago, don't eat it. Especially if you have major food noise, it's probably cravings for junk food. The likelihood that you're going to overeat chicken breast or potatoes is just so low, and vegetables, right? Compared to something like even protein chips. Some people might need to do a full-on detox from processed food for a short time. How long? That depends on you individually. A lot of this is very individual dependent in terms of taking these strategies and implementing them to where you're at personally. Very individual. Next tip I have for you, tip number 3, eat larger meals. So a lot of people try to, and this used to be me, man. I used to really restrict the heck out of my breakfast when I was teaching too. Man, when I was teaching, I would try to eat like a really small breakfast, like make it all protein, no fats, no carbs, and just go like, whoa, wow, I got sub 400 calories and I got a decent amount of protein. That's awesome. And then I'd be really fucking hungry later on. And then I'd need to have a snack mid-morning. I just ended up condensing all of those calories into one meal in the morning for my first meal when I broke my fast. So much better, so much more sustained hunger control throughout the day. My last about year and a half of teaching, that's the procedure I went with. I would have a high protein, high fat, low carb breakfast, and that kept me pretty full for about 4 hours and got me through the entire morning of teaching. Versus what I used to do, which former students, if you're listening to this, you guys would laugh. I was on like a green smoothie kick for a long time, and like I used to throw wheatgrass in that. Like, so there, I'd be in the middle of teaching class, and like I'd have like wheatgrass stuck in my teeth, and I'd be teaching class in front of 8th graders. And that particular group of kids, they were the seniors actually that just graduated this last year, so they were really funny about it. I think they handled it like one of the best groups of 8th graders in terms of handling something like that. I tried to almost intermittent fast by relying on green smoothies, which was just silly shit. So don't do that. Condense your snacks into meals. Next tip, eat more protein and fiber. So fiber and protein are things that make food way more filling. Not to mention, protein takes more energy for your body to digest. So when you consume food, there is a little bit of that energy that is in the food burned off in the digestion process. It's about 5 to 10% for your carbs and your fats, but it's 20 to 30% for your protein. So eating a lot of protein, unless you have a kidney issue, and there are some rare cases, especially if it's a pre-existing kidney issue, but outside of that, Just eat more protein, dude. It's really not a problem. So when it comes to fiber, so fibrous foods just tend to be bigger foods, right? We're talking about leafy vegetables, green vegetables, cruciferous vegetables. Those things tend to take longer to eat because they are more voluminous foods. They are larger in just pure size of the food. They also tend to be pretty low in calories, other than potatoes are definitely a little bit higher in calories, but potatoes are the best carb, man. I love them. Regular, sweet, doesn't matter. Eat you some potatoes. They're phenomenal for you. And they're the most filling food in the world. But fibrous foods also sit in your stomach and your digestive tract longer because of the fiber. And so because of that, that whole gastric emptying, which is also slowed by these GLP-1s, if you have more fiber, and a lot of people are not meeting their fiber intake on a daily basis, by the way, it's very likely that you will quiet that food noise because you'll be fuller for longer. So fiber intake recommendations for grown-ass people, men, we want to try to get 35 grams of fiber a day at least. And ladies out there, let's try to get our 25 grams of fiber per day. So fiber, protein, mega important. They can definitely help quiet food noise. Another tip that I use to avoid snacking is a quiet food noise. Drink water and wait 15 minutes. There are so many people in America that are walking around, and this is true, I think, a lot for teachers too, because it's hard to get a bathroom break sometimes as a teacher. You just don't always have the access for those bathroom breaks when it's convenient. So, but drinking water when you're feeling a food craving, when you know that you don't really have the calories in your budget for the day, drink water and wait 15 minutes and see if you're still hungry. And then on top of that, if you are still hungry, eat a little snack of a lean, super duper lean protein source, plain lean protein source, because that's going to tell you if it's food noise, aka a craving, or if it's actual hunger. And lastly, treat your meals like your sleep hygiene in terms of timing. Eat at the same time every single day, right? And teachers, this is something that I think a lot of us are probably bad about when it comes to our meal timing on the weekend, because we have, the different meal times that we can eat on the weekends. We're exhausted from the week. We're trying to recover. And so we just treat our bodies differently on the weekend. And you can't really do that if you're trying to get healthier. And ultimately, if you're trying to control food noise, you got to eat at the same times throughout the day. And if you're trying to get better sleep, you've got to try to go to sleep and wake up at roughly the same times, 7 days a week. And if you don't, and you're sleeping in and trying to quote unquote catch up on sleep, which adults, we can't catch up on sleep. Teenagers can do that, right? Teenagers need way more sleep than anybody else. Adults, we need to treat our sleep and our meals the same. The timing of those things being consistent 7 days a week matters a lot. So let's quiet the food noise. Let's hope that will stem the tide of the guilt and shame that you feel around feeling a craving. And ultimately, I want to see people eat fewer holiday cookies this season. If you're making sure you use these strategies around when in that break room at the office, or for teachers in that teacher workroom, that there's going to be all kinds of holiday treats. If you're trying to actually get healthier, you've got to practice some temperance. So stop and ask yourself if those treats support your goals, or if you want to be a stronger person than that. Doesn't mean you can never have the thing. It's just how often are you having the thing, and if you are actually in control of that choice. Because a lot of people aren't in control of their food noise, and they don't implement strategies like this to help with that. So I hope that those strategies help you avoid food noise, maintain a healthy weight, and even maybe lose some weight through the holiday season. Thank you all very much for listening to the Aaron Jacobs podcast today. Our topic today was quieting food noise to stop your food cravings, to prevent unnecessary weight gain. And hopefully that will be the case through the holiday season for you. Everyone take care and be well.